This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, and you're back in the Stone Zone right here in the Roger Stone Show. For the past 3 years, my next guest has been on a mission to correct a historic wrong. Kevin Kline is the grandnephew of U.S. Navy gunner's mate, second class Robert Edwin Kline, who was killed aboard the USS Arizona during the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. When Kevin learned that some of the killed men associated with the USS Arizona had been removed from the ship after the attack, never identified, and buried as unknowns in commingled graves just 10 miles from Pearl Harbor, and that the government had no real plan to ever identify and recognize these men, he decided to do something about it. He's been on my show many times talking about this one-man quest, but he started Operation 85 with just one goal: to force a resolution and to get the Pentagon to identify these men by or before the 85th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, which happens to be this year on December 7th. Now, I'm happy to say that goal is within reach. In 2022, a report to Congress written by the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Manpower and Reserve Affairs claimed it would take more than 10 years to find the families for DNA, cost $2.7 million, and stretched government resources so far that the effort was deemed impractical, if not impossible. However, in just 3 years, with $100,000 of his own money, Kevin Kline worked to prove that report was completely wrong. Today, because of his persistence, the Defense POW MIA accounting agency has announced that the disinterment of the 141 Pearl Harbor unknowns is now being planned for December 7th, 2026, exactly 85 years after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The men who died on the USS Arizona will finally be recognized as is appropriate. But now, this mission finally moves forward. A new bottleneck has emerged, and it leads right back to the same office in the Navy that wrote that 2022 debunked report. Joining us now to talk about this, Kevin Kline, a man of great courage and great persistence who continues this quest for justice.
Hey, Roger, how are you? Thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Kevin, congratulations. You've come a very long way in this one-man effort. I know that many, many people have supported you, and we're proud here within the Stone Zone to have brought public attention and awareness of this government mistreatment of the brave men who died that day, December 7th, on the USS Arizona. What does the Office of Navy Manpower and Reserve Affairs have to do with the efforts of identifying the USS Arizona unknowns to begin with?
Yeah, so first off, thanks again for having me on. And I wanted to say thank you to your listeners. I've lost count at how many times I have been on your show and you brought me on, but I did check. We've connected with 26 different families because of the Stone Zone and because of being on your show. So thank you to your listeners. You clearly have a wide range of listeners there, and we were able to connect with 26 USS Arizona families who did turn in their DNA and were part of this project. So I'm always grateful, for you to bring me on and for you to give me an opportunity to tell my story to your listeners. Now, we should be celebrating today. In fact, when we talked about coming on here a couple weeks ago, you said come on and take a victory lap, and I had thought we had passed this threshold and the DPAA was cooperating and we were moving forward to this. But there is a few more hurdles in here, and unfortunately I have to kind of bring them up. So you mentioned the Navy Manpower and Reserve Affairs, and that is the office that wrote this initial report in 2022 that said basically what I had done over the last 3 years couldn't be done, and your introduction was spot on. So the Navy Manpower and Reserves actually sits over the Navy casualty system, and that matters because family reference samples and family information flow through that structure. So when a project like USS Arizona depends on family DNA, that office can either help the mission move or it can slow it down.
So why does the DPAA need the names and addresses of the families, and why is the Navy resisting turning that information over to begin with?
Well, I was going to mention that. So just something as simple as asking, the DPA had asked the casualty office for the names and mailing addresses of families just to prepare to send out these invitations. The DPAA needs that information to, obviously, they're planning for a December 7th disinterment ceremony to help the families plan travel to Hawaii. The family members have to pay for their own airfare, hotel. I mean, it costs a lot of money. They may have to take off work. So the DPAA was being basically kind and trying to give as much time as possible. The resistance from this office, the Navy office, as I understand, it's because some of the Navy say that the disinterment is not formally approved yet. But from a family perspective, that makes no practical sense when everyone knows we've reached the threshold. We've done everything we have to do to make this happen. It's moving forward. So there's just this resistance. And it comes from this office that actually wrote that report that said this could never be done.
So what's the real world impact on this delay on the families?
I mean, and just talking to them, I think it's real. I mean, like I said, families need time to book flights, reserve hotels, save money, take time off from work. They're preparing to come to this disinterment ceremony. And it just, I just feel like it creates a lot of stress and higher costs that risk the families miss this moment altogether. So I think while DPAA is being conscious of that and trying to give the families as much time as possible, bureaucracy that really has, in my opinion, no need to have their fingers and paws all over this, bureaucracy just kind of stepped in and once again just pauses the system. And as a family member, that ticks me off.
Yeah, what I can't tell is whether this is simple bureaucratic incompetence or whether there are some people who are actually just trying to protect their ego after being proven entirely wrong. The Navy insisted this could not be done. You have proved that it can be done. They have the ability to do it, yet still they stall. I can imagine how it looks to the families when they deliver the DNA threshold, but the government still can't get of its own way to identify the remains of those who gave all for their country.
Yeah, bingo. I mean, I can't read and see into anyone's heart in that office, but I can certainly tell you, I can tell you how it looks. And, the same general structure that said in 22 the mission cannot be done, they're now part of this bottleneck. So, yes, it's hard not to wonder whether some of this simple bureaucracy is some of it might be people having trouble admitting that maybe their report was false or done wrong. And I remind you, that report, when you look at the front of it, it cost $83,000 in taxpayers just to say it couldn't be done. So there's probably somebody there sitting there a little embarrassed that, a real estate agent from Northern Virginia that has no experience in any of this can pull this all together in a couple of years and prove them wrong. I'm sure there's a little bit of embarrassment there.
Well, I know that you went to Senator Lindsey Graham, who unfortunately was of no assistance whatsoever. I know you also went to Alabama Senator Coach Tommy Tuberville, a truly great American. I know he's worked very hard to try to get justice in this matter, and I'm glad he was able to help you. But is this at the end going to require attention from a higher level leadership, including maybe the Secretary of Navy or perhaps even the Secretary of the Department of War?
In my opinion, yes. I think that this has reached a level of historic significance that deserves the high-level attention from someone like a Secretary of Navy or potentially Secretary of War, Mr. Hegseth. Someone that can see quickly the logic here and see quickly that bureaucratic nonsense is getting mixed in with the mission of DPAA and hopefully remove it. Roger, I've been on your show so many times, and, I complained about DPAA. I, as a family member, thought the bottlenecks were really within DPAA because they're the agency tasked to doing it. But now that I'm so much kind of in this and I see everything that's going on, I never realized how much bureaucratic hands are really tying the hands of DPAA. And, if I ever had an opportunity to talk with the Secretary of the Navy or talk with the Secretary of Defense, which I hope that happens one day, I'm going to let them know they need to clear out this bureaucracy from this agency and let the DPAA do their mission. And their hands are tied because of this bureaucracy. Simple things like this, where they're just pausing on addresses and pausing on, they need to get out of the DPAA's way. And I think their mission could be so much easier to do if we allow them to do that.
Kevin, if our listeners want to support your important work, where can they go? Or just to learn more about what you're doing?
Our website is ussarizona.navy, Navy. All the information for the program or the operation is there. If you're a family member, you can sign up there. You can sign up and subscribe. You can follow us along. Everything you need to know, again, the website is ussarizona.navy. And, hey, we're also taking donations. I put a lot of money into this on my own, but a lot of family members and supporters have stepped up, and they're really starting to donate, mainly to help us with the disinterment ceremony. We have a lot of costs that hopefully we can help offset with our 501c3. So also, if anyone wants to donate money, they can do it right at ussarizona.navy as well.
So what needs to happen immediately to remove the roadblocks?
Somebody at a higher level needs to step in and apply some common sense, in my opinion. Get the family information to DPAA that they need, get the invitations out, let the families plan, let this historic ceremony be organized the way it deserves to be organized. I mean, this does not, Roger, this does not require a long policy debate. It just requires some leadership and some common sense.
Yeah, it's really quite amazing. We seem to have the goal in sight. What you've done here is as a one-man force, just committed to justice and the appropriate treatment of these brave men who gave their lives. It's an amazing journey that you have been on, and we've come a very long way. And we're actually now to the point where victory's in sight, and we're being thwarted by a small group of bureaucrats who I think this doesn't really have to do with cost. It doesn't really have to do with feasibility. It has to do with ego. It has to do with the fact that these bureaucrats simply don't want to admit that they were wrong. I'm going to see if I can't connect you with the Secretary of War and the Secretary of Navy, perhaps Senator Tuberville, although he's leaving to become governor of Alabama, having won his primary in Alabama with 85% of the vote. Coach Tuberville, one of the greatest men in the U.S. Senate, a real fighter for our military strength, but also for justice. I'm going to touch base with him as well. It's an extraordinary odyssey that you've been on, and I give you an enormous amount of credit. You've put many hours into Operation 85. You've borne all these costs before. I have to tell you, you are among the most popular guests that we've had in the Stone Zone. We've always gotten an extraordinary reaction to your appearances here, and we're going to continue this fight alongside you. December 7th, well, it's easy for me to remember. That's also the date of the anniversary of my...
Right, you and your wife's anniversary.
My wife's anniversary, which tells you a lot right there. But you should not, under any circumstances, give up. We're going to try to connect you with those at the Pentagon who can help you. This appears to me to be a fixable problem. It can be fixed by December 7th of this year. We're going to have to take a quick break here for a moment, but when we come back, I want to wrap this up again and just kind of review one more time what the bureaucratic holdup is and how folks can help break that bottleneck. We'll be right back. And you're back in the Stone Zone on the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Still to come, we have a great interview with Troy Smith, the editor and publisher of Slingshot.News. We're going to focus on the Corey Mills situation. Corey Mills is the embattled congressman from Florida's 7th District who has a myriad of scandals swirling around him. I'm convinced if he is renominated, the Republicans will lose that seat in an election they cannot afford to lose. We're going to talk about that. Then also coming up is Mike Howell. Mike Howell is the president of the Oversight Project. You can find them at itsyourgov.org. He leads a nonpartisan initiative dedicated to exposing waste, fraud, corruption, and abuses across federal agencies. But we're going to be talking very specifically about this $1.8 billion weaponization fund that President Donald Trump wants to set up to compensate those who were the targets of political weaponization, such as the January 6th victims, such as those who were caught up in the Russian collusion hoax or the 2 impeachments. Liberal heads are exploding about this today, so we're looking forward to a great conversation with Mike Howell. If you're just tuning in, however, we're talking to my friend Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline is the grandnephew of U.S. Navy Gunner's Mate Second Class Robert Edwin Kline, who was killed aboard the USS Arizona during the attack on the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 1941. When Kevin learned that some of the men killed that day on the USS Arizona had been removed from the ship after the attack, but then never identified and buried as unknowns in commingled graves just 10 miles from Pearl Harbor, well, he decided to do something about it. He started Operation 85 with one goal: force a resolution and get the Pentagon to identify these men on or before the 85th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, which happens to be this December 7th. So, Kevin, one question, and that is, contrast the way the men on the USS Arizona were treated in comparison to the men on the other ships that were attacked that day.
And we're talking about the unknowns. And that's one of the things I wanted to be specific about, Roger, that I always make sure I want to say on your show. Sometimes I get messages from listeners if I don't say this. We are not in any way, this project is not in any way disturbing the sunken USS Arizona and any of the souls or remains that are buried within that ship. So I want to make that very clear to all the listeners. We are not disturbing the USS Arizona. That's where all of our family, most families, we all thought all the unknown missing crew were in that ship. These are only the unknowns that are buried in the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, 10 miles away. And to your question, yes, they had contracted to do family record samples and get DNA from every single ship at Pearl Harbor except the USS Arizona. And I believe because of this report, they just found it too impractical to go out and try to find all the family members, because the Arizona had the largest loss of life. And with that, that means you're going to have the largest amount of family members that you need to get DNA. It was a tough project. And instead of just saying it was a tough project and let's figure out how to do it, the Navy just said, well, it's a tough project, it's impractical, let's just leave it be. And I will say, I have heard this, I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard there are some people in this office that have a mindset that if people were buried as unknowns during the war, they consider they should leave them as unknown. They call that the sanctity of the grave. And I think maybe some of the problem is there's a mindset in this office of manpower and reserve that believes that we should not account for those missing Americans or those unknowns. And that's the biggest problem, because that goes directly against the DPA's mission to account for everyone. So when you have the DPA's mission, their sole mission is to account for every missing and unknown American. And then you have bureaucracy that controls them, that has a different mindset. There's the problem. I think that bureaucracy needs to be cut loose. And again, let DPAA do their job.
All right, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. One more time, Kevin, tell folks where they can find you online to get more information and to support your important work.
Yes, if you are a family member or you want to support this mission, USSArizona.Navy, USSArizona.Navy. You can reach out to me. You can connect as a family member. You can connect just to follow the mission. Anything you want, you can find it right there on our website, Roger. Thank you so much for everything.
All right, Kevin, thanks for joining us. Folks, don't go away. This is the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone, and we'll be right back.